guys, and welcome to a full spoiler breakdown video for the book Save Me, first in the Maxton Hall trilogy. So let's just directly get into it without further ado, because I've been planning this for literally months now and the day has finally come. I've been waiting so long and it's finally time that we get to do this together. If you're the kind of person who, number one, wants full spoilers for the entire book without actually having to go ahead and read it, or number two, wants to actually recap on the first season of the show, because the book and the show are very well adapted in the sense that everything that happens is literally the same, you're in the right place, because that's literally what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and read this and I'm going to give you full spoiler breakdown and thoughts, I guess, on what happens in the book, because now the English translation of the book finally came out this month, and while I have gone ahead and read all of these books in German, I feel like it's going to be a different experience altogether reading them in English. And listen, I want to recap myself for when the second season of the show comes out in a couple months now at the end of the year. So I'm gonna jump right into my read. I already have it downloaded on Kindle and I'm going with the English version this time, so I'm a lot more excited and happy about it, because clearly it's gonna be so much easier to read. But let's just directly get into it. I'm gonna go start, maybe I read a couple chapters and then come break those down for you, and we can do chapter by chapter or something like that. We'll figure a method out. But it's finally time, because I've been waiting so long for this moment, and now that they're finally out in English, it's the moment. Alright, and the cover is stunning, book is great from the past experience of mine from having read it for the first time. So already I'm excited for my reread. I'm excited to see how this goes, and I'm excited to come speak about it with you, because if you aren't already aware, I made a non-spoiler video for all of these books when I read them for the first time in German, and that was a little dumb because I told you to go ahead and ask your spoiler thoughts to me in the comments. I'll have the video on screen in case anyone's interested. And the thing is, I can't really respond to every single comment, and I can't respond to every single question exactly the way you'd expect me to, or kind of have me answer it the way you were expecting it to be answered in a specific length or whatever, because number one, I'm not ChatGPT, and number two, that would require a lot of resources and kind of good memory, which I really don't have, because I have blanked out on certain details. So now it's going to be fun kind of recapping and actually breaking it down in the sense that I'm hoping I'm going to answer every single question now, because I've got so many in here. And listen, it's finally time we get to them, and so it's time. If you want to break down, you're in the right place. And now I'm going to start, because I already have it saved on Kindle, and I'll come see you guys hopefully once I have a few chapters in. But yeah, it's finally time. It's actually happening. I'm so happy about it. Alright guys, so it's only a little bit later and I've gotten quite the way through the book. So now I'm 5% through. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's only been like 15 odd minutes since my last update to you. And as a slow reader, I always speed through these books like no matter what. This author, her writing style, there's something about it. I just finished them in no time. So I have finished a couple chapters now. I'm on chapter 3, and so while I won't really be giving updates every 2 chapters, I'm kind of lazy, and I know I just cannot keep up with all of that, because I know we have over 30 chapters and I know there won't be 15 updates. I do want to make a good first impression at the beginning of the video right now, which is why I'm coming into update now as I've hit chapter 3 to kind of update you on what happened on chapter 1 and 2, and then we can go back to reading, because I'm having the best time of my life, and now the urge to rewatch the show and kind of re-experience Maxton Hall again is coming back in so strong, which is very valid too. And so I don't know what I'm gonna do tonight, but it's probably either gonna be reading this book or watching the show, and regardless of whatever I end up doing, I will be updating you about it. But until then, first let's talk about my book so far. So if you're the kind of person who is actually going ahead and watching this video because you want to see what the hype is about and what the story is exactly before you go ahead and immerse yourself into watching the show or reading all the books, and you're just going in blind completely into this, I'm going to give a quick summary and then we can get into what the book so far has gotten along to. Basically, it ends up following these two main characters, Ruby and James. Ruby kind of comes from this like almost middle class family with like a lower upbringing or whatever, but they're happy, they're a humble family and not very fancy. Everything about them is very down to earth, and she has these great ambitions in life to kind of get to Oxford to kind of study there and be the first in her family who's gotten just like a higher degree of education. But as she's doing that, because they come from like a lower upbringing or whatever, they don't really have the money to pay for it, so she needs to ensure she kind of has the best grades and the best behavior, so she gets like a scholarship to Oxford, because that's been her life's dream and goal since she was literally 7 years old. On the other hand, we have James Beaufort. He comes from the most wealthy family in all of, I believe this is set in UK, and so he's on the complete other end of the spectrum or whatever. He doesn't have to worry about his actions and their repercussions and consequences or whatever, because like he can buy his way out of anything potentially. Money, throwing it at whatever problem comes up, it can literally just make it vanish. And so he's always been the reckless kind of crazy sort, and their lives kind of intersect as they start going to this place called Maxton Hall College, which is one step before her journey to Oxford University. So now while they're at Maxton Hall, now it's their final year there or whatever, and they haven't really crossed paths yet. What happens to make them do so is the fact that Ruby kind of walks upon this like scandalous secret that happens about the Beauforts, and suddenly he's trying to pay her to kind of keep quiet about the secret, except she's not the kind of person who would accept that money, and now he's trying to figure out what her inner intentions are, thanks to which they're thrown in together. And because he pulls some shit, like I said, he's reckless, his kind of prank situation kind of gets them into trouble or whatever, especially him. He gets the punishment to kind of look after the charity gala or whatever that the school hosts every single year, and it's on the same committee as her. So all of this to say, long story short, they're kind of thrown into the mix together in this forced proximity situation where he's trying to figure out her motives and intentions and whether she'd reveal that scandalous secret because it could potentially destroy his family and their upstanding name in media or whatever, and she's just trying to stay away from him, avoid him, to keep her reputation squeaky clean so that Oxford gives her that scholarship she's always been waiting for. And so as they're doing all of that, they realize the other is not exactly as the way they'd pictured or had the preconceived notions about that person to be, and so they start falling for each other, except now it goes against both of their ideals because like I said, they come from two different complete ends of the world or whatever. And so now would they actually sacrifice what their families stand for to kind of be together, and is their love important enough to do that? And basically that's the whole premise of the entire trilogy. There will be separate vlogs on book 2 and book 3 as I feel like it or whatever, as I get back into the mood of reading them. So for now this video is just gonna be book 1 or whatever, but I figured this is like the basic summary you need to know for the entire trilogy before you get into it or whatever. And now we will break down the spoiler thoughts. So from this point on in the video, everything I say about these books will be full spoiler, so if you don't want to watch it, if you don't want anything spoiled for yourself, literally just click out. I will see you guys in whatever video comes next that is not these videos, because these specifically will be full of spoilers now. So that's your warning, and now getting into what happened so far in the book. Chapter 1, we already get into the meat and thick of the story, I'd say, wherein now we actually watch Ruby kind of getting set out or whatever for her Oxford dreams. She's now starting the last year of Maxton Hall, like I said, and so we start off with her kind of speaking about her color coding system on her planner, and there's this one thing she really says that resonates with me. I don't even know why. She talks about the fact that she kind of has the best time checking things off like her checklist. So sometimes she just adds tasks she's already done just so she can check them off because it's like a rush of dopamine. And for some reason, tell me why that's literally me. So like that's me in a book. I feel so validated right now because I do the exact same shit. Don't know why I pull it. I feel very guilty every time I do it afterward anyway, but the happiness I get from doing it in the first place, I'm sorry, it's unmatched. And the fact that she does it, I don't remember if I read this around the time I did the first time around. I don't actually remember it sticking out to me, and so that's definitely why a reread is good. It kind of reminds you of the smaller nitty-gritty details that you forgot. And so now looking back on it, kind of remembering this and watching this kind of blend in with the whole character arc I know of her from the trilogy that I read for the first time around or whatever, I know that's the exact kind of shit she would pull. And so I'm happy to know she's kind of like me in some sense, and I can relate to a little bit of it. But basically we start off with her kind of speaking about her goals and aspirations into getting into Oxford, and she talks about the fact that she's wanted to go there since she was 7 or whatever, study philosophy. And that's so interesting to me because she's like been committed to the same idea for like 10 years. She's not had the phase we've all had as children where one day you want to be an astronaut and the next day you want to be a doctor, and then 2 days later you realize maybe I just wanted to be an artist all along. And so it's funny, it's crazy, but that's where we are so far. She ends up kind of realizing that as she wants to get along to Oxford or whatever, she needs these certain like letter of recommendations to kind of get that cool scholarship she really wants. And so she speaks about the fact that now as she's hanging out with her best friend Lynn, she wants to go and head to this guy called Mr. Sutton, who is the teacher who's kind of involved in the scandalous secret or whatever, to pick up her letter of rec from him because he's going to be the one giving it to her. And already as she's heading there, we can see the foreshadowing because she starts off by saying, maybe I shouldn't have gone ahead and asked him for it in the first place. Maybe he's not qualified or whatever, but she ends up going there anyway. She catches Mr. Sutton and Lydia, who are currently having an affair, and as it turns out, Lydia is actually James Beaufort's sister. So this is where it starts off. There's like a teacher-student romance involved, which she ends up catching on to, and it could potentially ruin everyone's life if she comes out with that secret. So she catches them in his room or whatever, and she's suddenly just like, wait, what? runs the shit out of that. Chapter 1 ends there, and I love how we're directly thrown into the sequence of events, because now there's no like jumping about, beating about the bush. We truly just know directly what's happening. The scandalous secret and the drama has been uncovered, and now we kind of need to keep reading to figure out what happens next. I did also want to go ahead and read one chapter in James, the guy in the book, whatever his perspective, just to balance things out or whatever, which is why I did end up going ahead and reading chapter 2 as well. And basically it now follows James. He wakes up unconscious at this like party or whatever at his friend's house, and that just goes to show his reckless behavior or whatever. He gets out of there, not a lot happens. You just get like background and insight into the friend group dynamic that is surrounding him or whatever. But as he walks out, he kind of is confronted with his sister Lydia running in as he's interacting with his friends, and she goes, "James, I made a mistake." And suddenly all of it comes full circle or whatever, because Lydia is the girl we saw with Mr. Sutton in his room in chapter 1, and she's James's sister. So James is gonna go do something about it to kind of fix her problem or whatever, like he always does by throwing money at it. But now this is where we actually watch them kind of get the sequence of events where now they're gonna be thrown in together, and we'll see how the love story develops. And so it's a great beginning to the entire trilogy. I love the way it's really set up to be very fast paced, because already we're jumping into the meat of things. And so while my next few updates won't be as in depth as this one specifically, I feel like this is just good enough to set the background picture for you in case you want a quick summary of it. This is also very well portrayed in the show, because I feel like all of what I just discussed is shown in the first episode, and it's really well done in the sense that there are exact details from the book that I'm now picking up on that were shown exactly the same way in the show. And so now I can't wait to go rewatch as well, which is probably what I'm doing. That's my plans for the rest of the week. And so I'm gonna go get back to reading. Maybe I'll update once I'm like at chapter 10 or something, at some huge mile point or whatever, like a checkpoint, and then I'll catch you up on everything that's going on, because it doesn't make sense for me to come update chapter by chapter. But if you haven't already read these books, definitely go ahead and take this as your sign to do so, because already I'm loving the English translation so much. I'm having the best time of my life, and now I'm hyped up again. I can't wait for the second season dropping. And while the second book wasn't my favorite, listen, I'm already so excited for it now, and so it's definitely building hype if that's something you are looking for as well. And so definitely consider checking it out. But now I'm gonna go back to reading, because I don't feel like pulling myself away from it at the moment, at least. So I'll go do that, and I'll see you guys hopefully in a little bit once I have more updates and thoughts to give you, and more spoiler breakdown on what's actually going on in the book, because it's catching up time. Okay guys, so it's now time for another quick update. It's also going to be the last one of tonight, which is why I'm jumping right in to give it. I'm not stopping reading at this point. I will continue reading, do not get me wrong. It's just I realized my Kindle battery is going really low right now, which is why I'm going to put this away. I'm going to go take a break, get my dinner eaten or whatever, and then come back. And then once I have my other Kindle ready to go to continue reading or whatever. That's not the problem. It's just this will be the last update, because it's getting later in the night as well, and I do need to go to bed at some point. It's just I do end up reading on my Kindle before bed, which means we can likely get another few chapters in before I go to bed. It's just I want to give my update for the ones I managed to read as of right now before anything, because I have like my notes written down on this little pad over here, and we can discuss that before I get into the rest. I have managed to hit chapter 6 at this point. It's been a little bit since my last update, and can I quickly just say I'm eating this shit up, every single crumb, gobbling it right up. So maybe I'm just truly obsessed with this word and I need more in it, or maybe it's just this author's writing style. Maybe I need to try more of her books or whatever, but truly I'm obsessed with my reread. And so now it's time for thoughts up till chapter 6, where I've reached at this point. Now we pick up from where we last left off at the end of chapter 2 or whatever. We're back in Ruby's perspective, and you actually watch her kind of feel guilt over the fact that she knows that secret now. She doesn't know what to do with it, and it shows that she's human. And I really like the way that was portrayed, because not a lot of people would have the kind of conscience to be thinking about it. They'd probably just sell it to the media, make money off of it. And you know, while she could definitely use the money, you watch her family situation, she's not doing that. She's different, and it's really nice. In the same chapter, her sister, who is called Ember, it's mentioned that she has a blog, and this is really important to remember in the grand scheme of things or whatever, because it does come up a couple times later. It's actually something about body positivity and her fashion designs or whatever she makes in regards to that or whatever. So it's definitely something you should keep in mind, because it will come up in the later books as far as I remember. You also get like a quick glimpse into Ruby's family dynamic, wherein her father remembers the specific dress her mother wore on their 10th anniversary, and and that was like years ago, and like it's very different if you compare it to James's family dynamic or whatever. And it's just something I wanted to mention offhandedly, because when you look back on it now, especially me with my reread or whatever, it hits so much harder knowing what I do, and it's just something that came up and I needed to talk about it. And now on the complete other spectrum of the world or whatever, the opposite side, we have the Beaufort family, James's family, who come from old money or whatever. They designed the uniforms for Maxton Hall, as far as it's been mentioned. They own one of the biggest like fashion design companies or whatever in the UK, and they're like a big popular name out there because they're like an old family or whatever. And in the midst of all of that, thanks to everything else, they're very pretentious. So on the other hand, we have this like really rich, unhappy family, and in comparison we have Ruby's not very rich, not very well off, but they're still very happy, and it's because of the family dynamic kind of situation or whatever. And it's really something to keep in mind. This book also has that one trope wherein he's like a prince, he's like the golden boy of the college, and she's the nobody girl who no one knows shit about and whatever, and like not very well off, not very popular, and that is a trope that's in here. Her friendship with Lynn is honestly everything, and I love watching it kind of start off and then the way it's going to develop over the next few books. The context we're kind of given on the scandal, because Ruby at the beginning, now she's kind of judging the teacher or whatever, wondering why he'd ever enter into this sort of relationship with his student or whatever, especially considering he just got out of his own like degree or whatever. He's worked very hard for it. And once you start getting actual details in the next couple of books, because looking back I do remember stuff, it's very interesting to look back on it at the beginning, because it's very easy to judge people. It's very easy to look at a book and judge it by its cover or whatever, but once you find out the inner details, once you actually do in the later videos that will come out of mine on this, you'll actually start to understand reasoning, and it's very interesting. It's very nice. I feel like the portrayal of complicated characters or whatever, the author, the way she's done it, it's kind of like peeling back onion layers of skin, wherein there's always something that's being exposed and coming to light, and I find that interesting. One thing I cannot stand behind is the fact that they say James and his sister, they have reddish blonde hair, and Ruby has bangs, and Alistair's a blonde and he's like skinny or whatever. Like, stop. That just doesn't align in my head, because I actually unfortunately went ahead and watched the show first, then I read the books, and because of that I already have the casting in my head as what the characters look like. I'm not imagining them specifically, and so thanks to that it doesn't align with the casting. But I mean, I feel like it's still fine. The casting does work for the book. It's just whenever these details are mentioned, I cannot deal with it. I'm so sorry. Stop. Now you also have a couple examples that are given as to scandals that happened in the past in his family, which is why he's very mistrusting or whatever, James. And it's really sad looking back on the foreshadowing, because there's a lot that is briefly mentioned now but will come up later again in the books. And so it's sad that someone has to go live in that sort of household or whatever, live that kind of life. And obviously it shows the difference in their worlds or whatever, that has to be established. But at the same time, it's really sad what he's kind of gone through, and I feel really bad for him. I kind of feel the pity. Also, the character development in the book is going to go crazy, because right now truly I find James so annoying, but I do remember that I used to be obsessed with him around the time I finished all the books or whatever. I was watching edits non-stop, so like I know that phase is gonna come very soon. I remember specific bits of it. It's just I really love the way he's shown as this like asshole at the moment, and once you start to see again the onion skin being peeled back, it's gonna be so worth it. It's got the high society, rich class, almost high stakes vibe, and that's really keeping it very interesting with the drama and all the setting going at the moment. I'm honestly eating that shit up. Just now, the previous chapter was the scene wherein you actually watch them play their first lacrosse game or whatever in the show, in the book, and it's very interesting because like now we get to also see the dynamic between him and his friend group and internally in the friend group, and we get to watch Alistair and Kesh. And can I quickly just say, Alistair is my favorite character ever, so looking back on it now, from what I know again of the entire series, I love the way he's always standing up for Kesh, even though there's other stuff that'll come to light later. And listen, the way he comes and just is literally the sweetest angel ever from what you read in the book. Sorry, I'm so obsessed. I think Alistair's like my favorite character of all time, and I'm obsessed. That's all I have to say. I've literally just written Alistair plus Kesh, obsessed. The kind of trust issues that have developed in James because of the past scandals is sad, because now again you get to watch the comparison between how money impacts different lives. His family has a lot of money, which is why they're very, I guess, disjointed or whatever, which is why they have to deal with all of that shit, and because of that they're in the media's eye or whatever, and from internally they're like broken up or whatever. And on the other hand, we have Ruby, whose family doesn't really have a lot of money, but they're happy internally and they're just together and united as a front. And so it's sad sad to look back on it because no child deserves to kind of go through that kind of childhood the way James and Lydia are. Again, onion skin layers. The development is coming, and watching slow bits of it right now is really well done by the author, but it's just something I wanted to mention. The last point I've written is literally a repeat of one of the previous ones. Alistair is so perfect, literally my favorite character. That's it. So now I'm gonna probably have some dinner, and then once I come back I'll pick my other Kindle up and continue reading. But so far so good. I'm having the best time, and now I can't wait to see what happens next and kind of update you on it as well, because while I do remember details, it's a little hazy and I want to go back into it again because I'm having the best time with my reread. So I'll go do that, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Bye. So I'm really trying to put like b-roll of the funniest scenes or the cutest scenes ever. So if you are watching the b-roll in this video, try to read what comes up on screen, because I don't want to summarize everything, but also it's very interesting some bits that happen, and I just wanted to show it in camera. Now I'm actually gonna go. Bye. Okay guys, so it's been, I believe, 2 days since the last time I came in and spoke specifically in this video, and that's really weird to me because I feel like 2 days too long. The first time around, I believe, when I was recording this specific vlog or whatever, the non-spoiler version, I do believe I managed to read all 3 books in the span or whatever it's been taking me to read only 1 book. And that's so weird because it's only 1 book. It shouldn't be taking this long, but it is. So maybe it's that I'm just assuming and kind of relating all the college hecticness I'm facing right now with my experience of reading the book, but for some reason it feels like it's taking me literally years at this point, so please ignore that. But at this point I have gotten ahead and made lots of decent progress. I just checked it on my Kindle and it says I've hit 80%. That's crazy. So we have lots to update and talk about, but I will be updating only up till my 60% of reading mark, because that's how much I managed to get done reading up until last night before I ended up going to bed at around 4 in the morning. And I also managed to write only those much worth of notes or whatever to kind of break down for you. The other 20% I managed to read throughout all of today or whatever, as I was waiting in line or as I was on my commute back home or in the morning or whatever. And all of that, I do have my notes, but they're on a separate piece of paper in a bag downstairs, and I'm just being lazy right now. So I figured I'd give you this update first, go for a minute or two, find that piece of paper, and then come back up and continue the update for the next 20% so that we have all 80% caught up, and then we can move on and I can go finish this book in my last update, because it is a Saturday today and I do need to go ahead and record a different video tomorrow onwards or whatever, so this needs to get done anyhow today, and I do believe it will. Fingers crossed. Hope is high. I think I will be done with it. It's just right now the updates that I'm really concerned about, because they are going to stretch long. There's a lot to discuss, and so let's just directly hop into it. Before anything, I do want to mention that I won't be giving you like a breakdown of every single conversation that's happening in the book, because I feel like not even a robot can do that, so don't really expect that off this video specifically. What I will do is give you a breakdown of every scene and every event that takes place in a sequential order, how it goes about, and important plot points that I think is important to this entire series as a person who's already read them for the first time around in German and already knows what happens through. So jumping right into it, starting off, I believe from like chapter 6 was when I last left off with you. We immediately jump into the Maxton Hall donor party. So it's kind of like a party for all the, or kind of like a mixer event for all the parents and influential donors for the school or whatever who are looking to enroll their kids or who already have their kids in the school. And basically lots of important people are coming to this party, and from what we know, Ruby and her group of friends or whatever, they are on the events committee team. They're the ones who planned this party. So if anything goes wrong, it's all on them, because the stakes are very high, and this is how we kick off into things immediately at the beginning of the chapter. As we start to go along with it, we start to watch Ruby kind of organize the party and look to everything happening as the way she likes it. She ends up having this conversation with Sutton, the teacher who she caught, and we don't really know what she's speaking about because it's from James's point of view, but what we do see is that James actually whips out his phone and takes a photo of them, and because of the lighting, it kind of looks like they're being a little too intimate in the close space together because it's too dark, and he thinks he can use this as some sort of blackmail picture later onwards, because still at this point he do believes that she's gonna come back with the whole Lydia secret or whatever and threaten his family with a scandal or whatever, so he wants to have some sort of dirt on her because she only has a squeaky clean reputation that's kind of invisible at this point, and he just wants to figure some stuff out. Do remember this picture? It comes up again, I believe, in the 3rd book or something like that, and it's really important, so that's just something that will haunt them later. After this, James's specific guests, basically the strippers or whatever, they end up coming into the party, crashing it, and everything goes to shit from there. And basically, he's completely ruined the party as was always planned. Now, for all of this, because this was an important event, the next day in school, Lexington, the principal, I believe, he ends up calling James to his cabin, and suddenly James is being punished. The golden boy of the college is being punished for the very first time for actually truly screwing things up, and his punishment involves playing no lacrosse whatsoever, because that is his number one priority in life at that point. And you've actually been given a perspective into how important it is to him, how he was literally the foundational stone for Maxton Hall lacrosse team, but now he's kicked off of it just to give him that punishment or whatever, and instead he has to join the events committee to see how much work actually goes into planning these events and how it's easy for him to ruin it, but also there are repercussions that will affect everyone else's reputation, and so he's thrown on there. However, in true James fashion, he doesn't show up to the first meeting. Instead, he ends up going to lacrosse practice or whatever, and as Ruby's walking out of it, she kind of sees him and she's just like, wow, that's literally it. That is literally it. He doesn't have to deal with anything. However, over the next couple days or whatever, there's other shit that goes on in the background. Again, we aren't given a view into things. It's more or less in the show rather than in the book, but stuff happens with James that isn't really discussed yet, that he figures, okay, he has to start attending these meetings because he has no other option whatsoever. If he is caught again on the lacrosse field, instead of just being suspended temporarily, he'll be kicked out permanently, and he just cannot risk that. So now he actually finally ends up showing up to the second meeting of the events committee or whatever, and he ends up sitting in on it. And over here, they kind of have the session wherein they're trying to plan the almost theme or whatever for the Halloween party that's coming up next, because they are the event committee. It's literally their job. But as all of this is going on, James is literally just shutting down every single opinion people are coming up with. So black and orange party, black and white party, gothic vampire party, and he's just like, wait, that's a little too unoriginal and overused. And suddenly everyone goes, if you think so, why don't you just give your opinions and your ideas instead of shutting down everyone else's? And so James the King comes up with the most iconic idea ever that everyone is obsessed and on board with, and suddenly now the theme has been decided for the party. It's Victorian ball era. This also does kick off a bunch of other events that do take place in the show that do make for very iconic moments. So if you haven't already watched the show, or if you have already, just take this as your sign to go rewatch, because there are specific scenes that one theme conjures up, and I will get to them in a second. It's really iconic the way it's handled, and it's something I wanted to mention. Now, after this meeting or whatever, he ends up heading out home, where he ends up hanging out with Alistair to kind of distract them both from the fact that they cannot go play lacrosse because both of them have been suspended. James because of the whole events committee thing or whatever, the thing he ruined, his punishment, and Alistair because I don't know if I mentioned it, but at the very beginning when there's that first lacrosse game and I go, oh, Alistair's the best character ever, it's kind of because he is defending Cash or whatever, and he ends up tackling and beating up this other guy on field, and thanks to that he's been suspended because there was disorderly conduct, regardless of the fact that the guy was the one who attacked first, and he attacked one of his friends earlier, I think 6 months ago or something. So he was just getting his revenge, but getting that revenge kind of costed him, not in a way he cares about, but it got him suspended, in the sense that now he and James are hanging out to kind of forget the fact that they cannot play, at least for a little bit, and you kind of watch them kind of bond and you see the friend group dynamics between the two of them. Now, as all of this is going on, the very next day they end up having this Oxford school prep kind of discussion or whatever, wherein there's this representative that kind of comes in and she's conducting all these meetings to kind of prepare all these kids, because all of them at Maxton Hall, most of them at least, they actually want to head out to Oxford. They have dreams of doing so, not necessarily like Ruby wherein it's their own internal dream. It's more like them fulfilling their parents' ambitions to look good in their societal class or whatever, so they have to do it regardless. And so while most of them are heading out to Oxford, they always have this representative kind of coming in on a yearly basis to kind of train them on what kind of debates and discussions will be taking place in the Oxford acceptance. And while I don't necessarily know how that process works, you kind of get a glimpse into it in this book specifically, wherein we have someone coming in and they start this whole debate on rationality, except from where it goes over there, Ruby and James really butt heads on that one specific discussion, because at this point they still don't trust each other and they kind of hate each other. And so Ruby, I believe, goes a little too far on it, wherein she starts, pointing and poking holes at the fact that James has not been raised in a very humble manner or whatever. The people he's been surrounded with since childhood aren't really the most best, and so while she's doing all of this, he ends up storming out of the meeting. Things are at an all-time high tense rate between the two of them, and I personally think she went a little too far, because it's not like James can control which kind of family he was born into and how he thinks. He can't really help it. He's just been raised to be like that. So I don't know, I'm on James's side over here, but basically at this point in the book or whatever, things are literally at this all high stakes or whatever situation between the two of them, because they hate each other, they're fighting really hard, secrets are on the rise or whatever. And so here we are. Now in the midst of all of this though, remember how I said the theme for the Halloween ball is gonna be Victorian era? For that specific, I guess, theme or whatever, the events committee kind of needs to design like a poster to invite everyone to come to the ball, except they need to have something that represents the ball on the poster, which means they need to have models kind of styling out Victorian era clothes on the poster for the ball to kind of distribute it. Except now everything comes with a price, and the kind of budget they've been given isn't the best to get the most fancy end of the line clothes or whatever, which is why now they figure, oh my god, James Beaufort is on the team, let's literally just go ask him. Because I don't know if I mentioned it, but his parents, they kind of own this like clothing line or whatever, which is supposed to be one of the best in England or whatever, wealthy or whatever, and dressing up only the noble class or whatever. And so as we go from here, now they're kind of debating the option of just asking him outright to help supplying these clothes or whatever, and kind of requesting him that, hey, we need clothes for the poster, please supply them. But because of the whole thing that happened in the debate with Ruby and James, things are at an all-time high. So they end up having this like almost heart-to-heart discussion or whatever. She ends up apologizing and making the archives request when she just needs those clothes for the poster. She doesn't really have other options, and you know, in the end he does give in to the poster, and we finally have the iconic scene wherein they take the trip to London together to the workshop, where they can finally go look at the clothes they need to pick up or whatever for the poster and see if it's all to their liking for the Victorian era or whatever. And so now you actually start to see them bonding together. The kind of hatred thing is coming out, and slowly as they spend more time together, they get to know each other. They get to realize that, hey, maybe the other one isn't as bad as I pegged him or her to be. On this trip as well, we've been introduced to Percy, his chauffeur, a very important character I think throughout the series, but nothing really important or whatever. He's still a side character. All the theories everyone I've seen has going online about how maybe his mom, so James's mom, had like some sort of affair with Percy. Not true, they were just really close friends. Especially from me reading the book, I know all of that, but he's still introduced, and I still think he's an important character because he's more of like a father figure to James than James's real true father Mortimer could ever be. And so just wanted to mention that. And also in the midst of all of this, Ruby has been mentioned to have like a manga obsession, which I've noticed doesn't really come up in the show, it's just in the book. So just something I wanted to point out. But basically right after all of this, they end up reaching London to go pick up the dresses or whatever, and here's where we get the iconic dress scene wherein she ends up dressing up in the dress, he dresses up in his suit or whatever, and they end up going taking those photos. But as they're doing all of that, she's coming down the stairs and he looks up at her. This is in the show, by the way. And you know, the heart eyes moment wherein they suddenly know that they're both falling for each other, they just won't admit it. And you know, we have iconic scenes basically coming in thanks to the Victorian choice or whatever, which is why that's something I'm really on board with and thanking the author for, because I didn't know I needed that, but now it's part of my DNA, and literally thank you for writing that. But as all of this is happening, while they're still at the workshop, his parents kind of come in and walk in on them, and suddenly the whole atmosphere in the room changes, wherein James suddenly has Ruby kind of kicked out because he doesn't want her to see the kind of parents and upbringing he's had, again appealing to this insecure side of him or whatever. And also he just doesn't want them to kind of look down on her and treat her any less than she deserves, except she takes it in the wrong sense, and she, you know, is just like, wait, he is kind of ashamed to be with me or whatever, he's kind of ashamed to stay around her or whatever, he thinks she's the dirt on his shoe or whatever. And so thanks to all of that, again misunderstandings arise, she suddenly hates him. And now a couple days later, we also have the scene coming in wherein he shows up at her house and apologizes, and another iconic scene when he goes, we cannot go back to the way we used to be before because you're not invisible to me anymore. And so at this point, it's truly established that they both have firm feelings for each other. It's just they haven't really necessarily realized it yet, but they're definitely falling in love. Now cut to another scene or whatever, because these scenes are very almost not coherent cohesive with each other, the chapters, but they do work in the broader story angle sense. Basically, now we have Cyril's party, because keep in mind they're all like high rich society, they do have parties all the time, and so Cyril, one of the guys in James's friend group or whatever, is throwing a party. Ruby kind of gets invited to tag along, and she ends up going because she wants to show them all that, listen, this isn't my usual scene, but I'll do it anyway because I'm not the uptight girl you think I am. Except as soon as she gets there, she has this one interaction with one of James's other friends called Ren. This also wasn't mentioned on the show, but she kind of has history with Ren, so I'd like to see the way that storyline is carried on in the show or whatever, because nothing's mentioned yet. But basically, at the very first Maxton Hall party event or whatever, at the very beginning when she got her admission in a couple years ago, she and Ren kind of hung out. Ren kind of mixed alcohol into her punch. She didn't realize it and she ended up kissing him, except the next day she was furious and she kept her distance from him, because that is not alright, because it was against her consent or something like that, which is why now James doesn't really know the kind of situation there is between the two of them, but you have been told there's history between the two of them, and she doesn't really like his character specifically. So if that comes in the show, you will know it comes in the show. It's just something that happened just now in the book. In the midst of all of that though, there's a lot happening at this party specifically. We have a couple interactions with Lydia, wherein suddenly they start finally coming around from the whole enemy state, because keep in mind, Ruby does know one of Lydia's most deepest, darkest secrets or whatever, and with the scandals Lydia's family has had in the past, he could potentially expose it and leave Lydia vulnerable. Except now, as they start to interact, Lydia finally realizes that her mistrust was unfounded, because Ruby is just truly an honest person in terms of character or whatever. She would never do that, and so you actually start to see, or kind of see this scene as like a pivotal moment in both of their friendship as well, because from here on out you actually start to see them bonding or whatever. The next day, Lydia kind of comes to sit at lunch with Ruby and Lynn, because the other kids or whatever would come bug Ruby about her connections with James otherwise, and so you start to see them become friends, and this was a very important scene in terms of that. Also at the party, there's this one point or whatever wherein Ruby finally realizes that the scene isn't actually her thing and she just wants to get away, and she ends up walking in on Kesh and Alistair in the library or whatever. They're just kissing, but she catches them anyway. What is it with Ruby catching people at the worst time whatsoever? And so now she runs out. She knows their secret too, but basically they're involved secretly. Kesh doesn't want his family to know, and Alistair is kind of in love with him, so while he doesn't want to be treated like a secret, he's just dealing with it anyway, because he knows he won't have another Kesh out there for him or whatever, which is why here we are. That's probably the most saddest story angle or whatever, because Alistair is my favorite character. Only want to see him happy. It's already hurting me so much, but it's gonna be worth it. It is gonna be worth it in the third book, but here we are right now. This is also setting the foundation for more interactions between Ruby and James's friend group. When she comes out, still at the same party, we also get the most iconic pool scene ever, wherein she kind of, as a prank or whatever, is thrown into the pool by Cyril, except it's not a joke, because she's actually afraid of water thanks to this past of hers that we've been given a glimpse into. Her fear kind of comes from this place wherein when she was younger, she had gone on this boating trip with her father or whatever, except she ended up falling under, and because she wasn't able to swim to the top, her father went in to kind of rescue her, except something goes wrong. There's like a cruise liner or something that goes up top, and because her father doesn't realize, pushes her out of the way, he has this accident wherein he loses mobility, and now he's been disabled to like a wheelchair or whatever. So thanks to that, she is afraid of the water. She just cannot swim. Whenever she falls in there or whatever, her mind locks into that specific memory, and that's one of her deepest like childhood traumas or whatever. So now when she's thrown into the pool, her body literally just seizes up. She's stuck in there, and so while James does go in to save her, there's a lot that happens between them. There's this whole emotional bonding moment. It does give you definitely like a glimpse into her past and history and her traumas, and I feel like that's really important to get like a complex central understanding of the characters, and also kind of relate and connect to them specifically in a place of sympathy or whatever, because she didn't deserve that, but she had to go through it anyway, and so it does give you a deeper understanding of who she is at her very core. This, however, scene does contribute to the fact that there were a bunch of people around when James did jump in to save Ruby, and while he got her out safely, a bunch of people took photos of the two of them, and now that's circulating, so suddenly her name is not as invisible as she'd have liked it to be or whatever, and she's now suddenly under everyone's radar because she was in the infamous James Beaufort's hands or whatever, and so that is something that also takes place, and which is why the next day or whatever, at the bus stop or whatever, when he's coming to pick her up after the weekend, they end up hanging out or whatever, they have conversations, and he's staying close to her. This moment was very important, because at this point you truly start to see the two of them actually understand that they have feelings for each other. They'd do anything, and an emotional connection is being established, because the way they're bonding after that scene, especially in the show, so cute. I feel like that truly am obsessed. If anyone's ever heard Story of My Life by One Direction, that whole scene wherein I drive all night to keep her warm, sorry, that is the little embodiment of this specific scene in the book. And so here we are. Also, the next day when they get out of the bus stop or whatever, they're hanging out together walking to class. I forgot to mention, but James, while he's been asked what he did over the weekend, he says his aunt Ophelia kind of came in to visit. And while this wasn't something I caught the first time around because I just didn't find it important, looking back now the second time around, this is a very important moment because you're being introduced to someone outside of the normal circle or whatever. Ophelia is James's mom's sister, a very, very important main character in the next couple of books. So just keep that in mind when those books come up, when those specific scenes and moments come up. I will tell you about it, but for now, very important to remember, do not forget Ophelia is mentioned for a good reason, and she's going to come up as a recurring character and as an important integral character to the main central core story of the play in the next couple of books. So we'll get to that, but just remember that she was mentioned, and we are setting up groundwork now for what's to come. As all of this is happening, we also end up having a couple scenes wherein Ruby's hanging out with James's friends, and we're also watching James and Ruby at the event hall meetings, and you just get to watch their dynamic in the friend group overall, and I feel like it's really sweet and again important to the story. I won't be covering them because they aren't really necessarily in the grand scheme of things, but it's just there to give you like a good factual ground basis or whatever on these two characters and to better understand them. And so it's good that it was there. It's not really important, which is why I just had to mention it briefly. And then at the very end of all of this, it's also mentioned that it's going to be Ruby's birthday now, and so James is just like, wait, I have to come up with something, and this is where I stopped last night. I did continue, like I said, on my commute over, so I'll go fetch my piece of paper and come update very soon because my throat is also hurting now from having spoken so long. Maybe get like a drink while I'm at it, and so update you guys very soon. But this is how much reading I've gotten in so far. Lots of updates, very long clip. Hopefully you aren't very bored and tired of my explanation style, and hopefully you're okay with it because I do plan on making videos specifically for the second and third book. But as we go along with that, I will go fetch my paper now so I can continue speaking to you guys until the 80% mark and then finally resume and finish my book out. But see you guys in a bit. Bye. This has been one long ass update. Okay guys, so I'm back. It's been a little bit because I wanted to take like a quick little breather in between because I was so tired from having spoken for so damn long in the last clip. But I have gone ahead, located that piece of paper where I haphazardly, hastily wrote every single thing I thought of or whatever, and copied all my notes now in a decent order where now I can actually decipher what I've thought of and written down onto my trusty little board here. So it's now time to get back into the dissection. Basically where we last left off was on the part where I said it was Ruby's birthday or whatever, that chapter, and then I continued reading from this point onwards since today morning on my commute over and whenever I got whatever time or whatever. So when I was waiting in between classes or when I was standing in line for stuff, and basically you get the point. So now back to the story. James ended up gifting Ruby for her birthday this bag. He sends it in the mail and it's from Beaufort Company or whatever, but it has her name on it or whatever as her initials, and it's got like compartmentalization, it's got sequencing as someone who loves order, Ruby, basically it's like the perfect gift. Her current bag is also literally falling apart, breaking down, so it's like literally the most handy utility item you could actually get her, and she's really happy about it. So she ends up calling him on the phone later in the night to thank him, and he ends up letting her know that this bag is actually called the James. So the model he sent her is called the James because he told her the other models, so like the Lydia and the Mortimer, they wouldn't be perfect for you, but it would be nice to watch you walk around with the James. And already, I'm sorry, that is like peak energy. Only King James could literally pull that off. But basically they go from there. They end up speaking till like 3 in the morning, talking on the phone for hours on end until their ears literally start hurting and the hand is hurting from having held the phone up for so long. But basically it's like a cute moment establishing their relationship and finally giving them, I guess, like bantery times, but also sweeter, more emotionally heavier and deeper times, and they start talking about life aspirations and goals and family expectations and all these other things that they wouldn't have discussed normally in the quiet of the dark or whatever, because they are in their own separate places. They don't have to look at each other, and so secrets come to light. They have this deeper understanding of each other, and again it's very important to establish an emotional connect with the two characters because you have to spend like a trilogy in their perspective, kind of watching their love story play out. And so I really like that scene personally. In the midst of all of this though, Ruby does end up realizing the kind of control his family has on James, the way their claws are literally sunk in far too deep, and this is actually his last year in Maxton Hall, but also his last year in life that he actually has some semblance on control controller in anything or whatever. He's free because from next year onwards, once he starts going off to Oxford or whatever, which he doesn't even want to do in the first place, he's unsure about. He has other things to worry about, like Beaufort Industries or whatever. He has to become the face of the company, handle this huge like inheritance he's gonna get, like whatever passed down to him. And so lots of crazy shit is happening, and basically he has a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and she realizes that, and so she decides she's gonna act on it to kind of ease things up a little bit for him. So basically what she ends up doing the next day is actually going ahead and going to Principal Lexington and letting him know that, listen, maybe you should ease up on the term you've put on James because of his good work ethic. And she lets him know that he's been contributing in the best way possible, and now Maxton Hall kind of needs him back on the lacrosse team because their reputation's going down the tank there. His replacement is just not good enough, and so put him back on the lacrosse team. She's not really telling him the fact that she understands now his backstory and now how important that is to him, and so she wants to kind of give it to him despite the fact that she wants to keep him as well on the team and spend all that time with him. And so she's kind of giving him up because she loves him, and it's really sweet. It's a nice moment. She's kind of fighting for his rights. Lexington kind of gives in or whatever, and so now as soon as the whole party is over, if it goes by without a hitch, he's gonna let James resume team practice and he doesn't have to come to these meetings anymore. And suddenly, you know, he finally gets that freedom back of his that was actually taken away from him in the first place, and he kind of deserves it too, because you actually start to get backstory and suddenly he's not such an insufferable character anymore. You start to feel that sympathy, and again, character development coming in strong in these books. Basically now fast forward to the Halloween party or whatever. It's taking place in the midst of all of this throughout the entire book. I forgot to mention, but especially at the party, you see Lynn and Cyril kind of butting heads, and from what we've learned of Lynn's past, she used to be really rich and run in the crowd, I guess, with all these like popular people or whatever, the rich people, except something happened with her father or whatever. There was a scandal in the past wherein he ended up having an affair or whatever, and the woman he was having the affair with kind of swindled him out of all his money. So now he was broken penniless, and her mother left him or whatever, and now she's just living off of what the mother was able to scrape by. And so she isn't really running in the same crowd anymore, which makes you realize that she used to be friends with Cyril in the past, but now, you know, thanks to all the scandal that's happened, they're not friends anymore. So I feel like there's still some history and backstory to uncover there, but especially at the party you see them kind of butt heads, and so that's just something I wanted to mention really quick. After this, Ruby and James, they end up going to dance or whatever. She tells him that, listen, you're going to be free as soon as this party is over, you can get back to practice. He, you know, lets his guard down and realizes that she's done this huge great thing for him, except before anything happens, the lights go out. So the lights are out, there's a power cut, something's gone wrong in the party, they're both freaking out. They end up running to the power generator room, kind of flipping the switches back on, and suddenly everything's back. Power's restored, nothing to worry about, except as they do all of this, you kind of now realize that they are in their fancy Victorian costumes or whatever, and they had this whole emotional moment before them, and suddenly now they're in a room by themselves, no one else with them, they're all alone, and suddenly that means they can do whatever they want. So in the midst of all of that, Ruby's just like, okay, I guess this is goodbye, and guess what James does? He ends up kissing her. So they have their first kiss in that room, except the worst thing is, as they're doing it, his father, Mortimer, kind of walks in and he's just like, listen boy, your mom's calling you, you need it right now. Honestly, Mortimer is like the cartoon, like Disney evil villain or whatever. I hate him every time he comes in a scene. Genuinely, I feel like his character arc could easily be fixed, but he was just made to be the bad guy or whatever. Not even shades of grey, it's literally shades of black or whatever on the mortality chart. And so here we are, he ends up calling James, dragging him away, and so as all of this happens, you kind of see them start to explore their, I guess, feelings for each other, but it's cut down right in the bud, because as soon as James is taken back out, his family kind of rejects this whole thing that's going on with Ruby. They kind of threaten him and let him know that, listen, if you don't stay away from her, they could potentially ruin her life, because they know everything about her history, background and past, which means they've probably called some sort of private investigator on her in the past, and they won't, you know, hold back next time if they need to really dig shit up and really need to, I guess, ruin her life or whatever. So he figures he has to stay away, and this, even though it's because of external influences, I feel like the slow burn, it really contributes to the whole push and pull between the two of them, because you just got a moment between the two of them, they just kissed for the first time, and suddenly now he has to draw back because of his family or whatever, everything else that's happening in the background. And so here we are. I think it's really well done in the book. The chemistry is off the charts. This author really knows how to do it really well. But basically, in the midst of all of this, James's father actually ends up hitting James, and so James does realize it's serious or whatever, and he has no other choice. Cut to now, I think the weekend later or whatever, when they are finally getting back to school. Ruby has been anxious all weekend to see what's going to happen of the two of them. Are they going to play it cool, or are they going to jump into the meat end of things, and are they going to, you know, finally become a couple or something like that? Except when she goes to school on Monday and she's gonna go up to him, say hi in the hallway. He ignores her flat out. He ends up going to someone behind her, whatever. He just lets her be, and suddenly she has all her like high school butterflies crushed, and she's just like, wait, what the hell is going on? So she kind of ends up going to the lacrosse field later in the day to just have like a talk with him, except he tells her that maybe it wasn't real in the first place and it's over now or whatever, and he tells her, listen, just move on, it's not a big deal, I got what I wanted off you, I'm back on the lacrosse team. And suddenly her heart is broken. She doesn't know how to process things anymore because she truly really liked him, and now she can't move on, even though she's attempting to. And in the midst of all of this, you remember the bag I said James got her for her birthday or whatever, the James, the model, literally, she ends up returning it, and the note that he wrote her, she literally writes F you back on the note, sends it back to him. And the worst part is, he saves that note that she sends back to him along with the bag. He keeps it and he folds it up in his wallet, and every time he remembers her, he takes that note back out and remembers how he's hurting now as well. And so it's really sad, it's so sweet at the same time, and it's breaking my heart truly for the two of them because I only want them to be happy. And so please bring them back together. I cannot handle this anymore. But basically in the midst of all of this, Lydia kind of comes to realize that her brother's feelings for Ruby are kind of true, and so she realizes he's missing her or whatever, and she kind of comes in with her own story. And suddenly you start to get backstory on Lydia and Sutton, wherein now in her past, remember the whole scandal thing I was referring to? There's something that happens with Lydia in the background or whatever. When she was 15, there was this reporter called Greg, and he was pretending to be her boyfriend, but really he was in there for the inside scoop on the Beauforts, and he kind of used her and then manipulated and threw her away. And so that really affected her because that's a really young age to be, you know, taken advantage of in that sense or whatever. So now she's heartbroken, she doesn't know where to go. There's these articles that have been published on them back again when she was 15, thanks to that reporter. And thanks to all of this, she ends up going to Tumblr on this anonymous account, posting online, and someone responds to her post, and suddenly she's having these interactions back and forth with this person online. They become the best of friends suddenly more, and that's Sutton, except before he becomes a teacher, they break things off, and then on the first day of school when Ruby catches them kissing, it's a relapse. So basically it's this whole like tragic, almost emotionally gut-wrenching story between the two of them as well. And suddenly you realize it's more than just a teacher-student fling, it's so much more than that. And so she has her own qualms with it, she's also missing him, but nothing can come between it. And now you suddenly realize that just like the way Lydia and Sutton will never have a chance ever, Ruby and James are also very similar, they will never have a chance ever. And so the author is coming in clutch, breaking the reader's heart over here. To make it worse, the next day in school or whatever, there's this whole debate taking place for the Oxford like prep or whatever, wherein it's on forgiveness. And so she's throwing all her barbs at him. He's taking the jabs quietly because he feels like he deserves them, but also he wants to do better for her. And listen, breaking my damn heart, I cannot handle this anymore. The way it's happening, I feel like these debates are definitely being used as plot points, because the first time around it was to like create tension between the two of them. The second time around it's to kind of create the broken sense or whatever, and like it's done well. But I feel like if we had more of these debates, then it would feel less coincidental, because every time I feel like even the topics that are chosen are very specific to their situation, and so it feels a little too overdone. But also I don't care because it's hurting regardless. And so here we are at this point. Now fast forward a couple days, Ruby ends up getting a mail in her mailbox or whatever, and she finally gets the acceptance into Oxford or whatever, just for interviews. So she cleared the first stage of selection in school or whatever, and suddenly now all her dreams are one step closer to her, and it's finally time. She's actually going to get into it. And so now she gets to go to Oxford for like this 4-day stay for her interviews, and she's excited because her dreams, they might actually come true. Except now when she gets to campus, guess what? The room she's been given, the very room freaking opposite hers, is James's room. So as she's walking in, she's unlocking her door. Guess who walks up behind her to unlock his door? James. So she just had this like whole heartbreaking moment with him or whatever, and suddenly close proximity, he's put in the room at the very exact opposite side of hers, and she doesn't know what to make of it. But she's just like, it's Oxford, that's more important to me than any boy ever will be. And so she's now gonna attempt to move on, see where that goes. But here we are with the story. This is also the final part I managed to hit or whatever before I was done reading for the day, at least, and got back home or whatever, which is why now I'm gonna go get back into my book, finish it out, and then I'll come update maybe later tonight, because there isn't a lot left. I definitely think I can finish in like an hour and a half of reading. But regardless of whenever I do, I'll go take my notes now and I'll come update on what happens next. But we're reaching nearly the end of the video. It's so crazy, and I think I've been yapping for far too long, so I'm just gonna go now because my brain cells feel fried. But so far so good. I am enjoying my reread, and hopefully you are enjoying my explanation as well, if it's making any sense to you. But here we are. I'm actually gonna go now and Bye. Literally bye. If you haven't read these books though, and if you are just watching this video as spoiler, please go read these books because it's so worth it if you can't already tell with my emotional reactions to them. And now I'm actually going to go get back into it. I'll tell you what happens next later. And bye. That's it. Been yapping too long. Bye. Hi guys, so it's been a couple weeks since my very last update to you. I have gone ahead and finished the book since. I finished it the very same day, I believe. I stayed up till like 4 in the morning, but the thing is I forgot to come in and update for whatever reason, which is why I figured might as well come in right now because the video does need to go out tonight. It's as I'm editing that I realize this, which is why here I am. I have all my notes compiled. It's just for some reason I never came in. So I'm gonna make up for that now and give you my final updates from the 80% mark to the 100% mark of what happens in Save Me, the spoiler breakdown, and then I'll give you my outro and we'll be finally done because it's been such a long ass time, for now at least. So basically, since the last time I came in and spoke to you, we kind of left off at the point where Ruby is at Oxford or whatever for her admission interviews, and so now it's kind of the morning of the interview. She wakes up all excited. She ends up going to the room waiting till her name gets called out, and when it finally does, it's time for her to like walk up to that place and give her interview that she's been waiting for since she was literally 7 years old. Except as she's walking there, James and her, they haven't really spoken in quite some time now because of the whole thing going on with his family, except she's not aware. She thinks it's all him. So as she's walking up, he kind of wants to wish her good luck, and he does so by kind of holding onto her hand as she's passing by. And so I don't know, I personally found that a bit unfair on both of them, but it's also quite a sweet moment because he didn't know how else to wish her good luck, and regardless of the consequences, he still does it in that room full of people. And so she has her kind of beacon of hope or whatever in that moment given through him, and she ends up going for the interview, and it kind of goes good. So I guess that was good, and it was fine to mention or whatever. Now after the interview, she's kind of been given the rest of the day off or whatever because that was all that was scheduled, at least for the morning. So she has the rest of the day to kind of explore campus, see what university life is like, see if it kind of matches up to her dreams or whatever. And in true Ruby fashion, because she kind of reminds me of Hermione Granger from Harry Potter, she pulls a complete, I guess, like Ruby Bell, only because she ends up going and attending this lecture at Oxford. She kind of sneaks in and no one catches her, which is why she sits down, takes a class, has the best time of her life, is hoping that's not the last class she takes, is hoping she kind of gets in there because truly that would be her dream come true. And so that's what she ends up doing for the rest of the day until evening, wherein finally there's kind of like this social call event for everyone, the candidates who are coming there at this like pub. So she's getting ready to go there, and that's the plans for the evening. Except when she gets there at the pub at the very beginning or whatever, as soon as she walks in, she sees the whole gang there. So James and all his friends or whatever, and Lydia, they're all at a table or whatever having the time of their lives. From the outside, from the inside, she realizes that not everything is as it seems or whatever. Again, that's very well depicted in the show because James, he looks conflicted. Alistair and Kesha eyeing each other, but they can't do anything about it. Cyril is just being Cyril, and Lydia, there's some stuff coming about her in a second or two, so that's going on. And then there's Ren, obviously, but that's basically it. So she ends up walking in there, waiting out, getting her drink. Except as all of this is happening, she keeps looking back at James's table because she still likes him, she's still heartbroken over him. And while she's doing all of this, she kind of notices that Lydia, this is the point where it comes up, some time has passed. She went to the washroom and she never came back. So now Ruby's wondering what she's doing in there because Lydia, I think was gone for like 20-30 odd minutes, maybe 40, and suddenly Ruby's kind of worried and concerned about her because you guys remember that one time wherein Lydia came to kind of have lunch with Lynn and Ruby just to ward off the vulture hawk kind of kids who wanted to prey on Ruby after they found out she has connections to James. Yeah, so Ruby goes, Lydia defended me when she didn't have to. At a point she didn't have to, so Ruby just wants to watch out for her well-being, which is why she ends up going to the washrooms looking for Lydia. One stall is the only one that's occupied, and you can kind of hear a woman crying and throwing up in there. So Ruby goes, knocks up just to see if the person inside is doing okay, and you hear Lydia's voice kind of telling her to please go away. Obviously, again in true Ruby fashion, she still persists regardless. She ends up going in there, finding Lydia violently vomiting, wondering what's going on, kind of starting to cross-question her, wondering if she had too many drinks and why she thinks she cannot go to Oxford and why she's so down or whatever in terms of behavior, why she's not feeling so happy despite her interview going well. And as it turns out, Lydia lets quite the bombshells loose or whatever. she's pregnant. She's got a baby and it's Sutton's, and that's why everything she's ever hoped for, whatever, now her life, her plans, suddenly everything's changed because she has a baby and she just doesn't know what to do about it, and Ruby is the first person she tells. So because Ruby already knows the family dynamics that are there in Lydia's family, she kind of ends up offering some sort of emotional support or whatever, and also lets her know that whatever appointments or like meetings she needs to get to now, she can always count on Ruby to come along with her, to be there as just some sort of like company over there so she doesn't have to be alone. And this is truly where you see their friendship kind of cement, because they both like somewhat thought the other was like a good person and whatever, but at this point they truly like each other. And it's finally becoming a thing. We're finally starting to go deeper into the Ruby and Lydia dynamic, and it gets better throughout the series. That's something I really enjoyed. So this is the beginning pivotal point of it all, and it's great. Now fast forward to the next evening, because that's where the next scene takes place. As it turns out, they have like another thing going on after all the interviews for the day are done. It's basically that there's gonna be this like Q&A event with all the seniors. So I don't think I really said it, but throughout all these interviews that they've been having, they've been guided by specific like representative seniors all throughout, kind of giving them help and support, and just like offering moral, I guess, guidance. And so these seniors are going to be the same ones at the Q&A who will answer all of the candidates' questions about admission and like college life and whatever they need to ask or whatever. And so that's basically going on the next evening. Except at it, James kind of starts picking a fight with this other guy called Jude. He's a senior who's been acting a little too friendly towards Ruby, and James obviously isn't having it despite the fact that they're not together. He's like jealous, and so as he's fighting with Jude, Ruby kind of steps in to defend Jude, and so Ruby and James end up fighting. Ruby storms out. James kind of follows her, and this is again where we get one of the most iconic scenes ever, because now we kind of have James giving his angry love confession. Those are the best, most iconic scenes ever, and the way it was done here, even in the show, honestly, if you've watched it, James, in the German version at least, it literally sounded like he was rapping because it was so good and he was just going at it, and that honestly was such like a great moment. But basically after that, they end up kissing, they end up making up, and now that they're finally on somewhat speaking terms again, James finally gets the chance to explain his side of things and the perspective his family has adopted on their relationship or whatever, and why everything went to shit, why everything went wrong. And this is where they start to kind of reconcile and kind of understand that it isn't them specifically, it's just right person, wrong time, and it's external influences that are kind of controlling and manipulating every single thing that's going on. So after they end up getting together, as they're discussing other ambitions and stuff, and how James is still confused about what he actually wants to do in life because he feels too pressurized by Beaufort and everything else going on with it to actually consider, Ruby kind of sits out to make him his own list of dreams that he'd like to pursue one day if circumstances would be different or whatever. And as all of that's going on, he kind of adds her name to the list because she is one of his dreams. And so we get like a sweet moment, but right after this everything goes straight to shit, so like don't expect too much. But this was a cute moment regardless, and I just wanted to mention. So the next day, as they're leaving Oxford because their stripped stay or whatever, it's finally come to an end. Here's where everything's gonna go wrong, because as they get in the car, Lydia and James, Percy, their chauffeur, he doesn't speak to them, like not even once. He's being like awfully quiet or whatever, and so they start getting suspicious and they wonder if something's off, because he didn't even ask them if their interviews went good or whatever. He wasn't his like usual jovial self, and they soon find out why, because once they get back home, they find out from their dad that their mom, she passes away. So she passed away 2 days ago because she had this like stroke or whatever, except their father didn't bother mentioning it to them, especially when he had called to wish them luck or whatever while they were at their interviews or whatever, because he didn't want to mess that process up. And so their mother dies, and it's been 2 days, and they just find out now once they get back home. So both of them have their own ways of kind of breaking down. Lydia kind of has this like emotional breakdown or whatever. However, James, after everything he suppressed thanks to everything that's been going on in his life, he finally breaks and caves under that pressure. He lashes out, and so he ends up punching his father, getting pulled back by Percy, and he has this fit wherein he's just like, now he just cannot stand to look at his father's face, so he leaves. He just takes the car and speeds off into the unknown, and this is where another worrying thing happens, because suddenly no one knows where he's gone, no one knows what he's gonna do, and he's not in a great state of mind. So Lydia essentially ends up leaving and going out to find James or whatever. She ends up going to Ruby's house first, but James isn't there. So Ruby thinks that, okay, maybe I'll come along with you to help you find James. And as all of this is going on, Lydia kind of ends up calling Cyril, one of their friends, and Cyril goes, yeah, James is at this party at Cyril's house, he's alright or whatever, which is why they both decide that they're going to head over there. And as soon as they walk in, they see James doing drugs. So not that it's correct what he's doing, but also you can kind of understand why he's doing it, because he just found out that his mom passes away and his father doesn't tell him about it and everything else that's going on. He goes back to the old James, and suddenly Ruby's shocked, because the James she knew and the James she loves isn't the sort who would do that despite everything that's going on. So it's like a morally grey moment wherein you can kind of see the justification behind his reasons, but also it's kind of out of character for him, at least in Ruby's version, which is why she's just shocked. She kind of wants to walk up to him and shake him out of it, except she doesn't actually know what's going on. She's just scared and worried about something else that's going on, maybe something that might have happened to him. She doesn't know that their mom passes away. And so as all of this is going on, Ruby kind of walks up to James to kind of just speak to him or whatever, kind of get him out of it, except he sees her coming. He just doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to like break another person's heart and let someone else down, which is why he leaves from there. He ends up going into the pool, and we all know Ruby has like a fear of water, so she can't really follow him in there. She's watching from outside as Elaine Ellington, Alice's sister, the girl James woke up with or whatever at that first party at the very beginning, chapter 2 of the book, she ends up pulling James and kissing him. And while James doesn't necessarily kiss her back, or at least we aren't told of it, he doesn't pull away, he lets her do it. And so Ruby sees, Ruby turns around to flee and run because she is suddenly heartbroken. Lydia calls after her and goes, "He needs you now, please stay." But Ruby is too heartbroken, too emotionally, I guess, worn out to actually process what's going on. And this is truly where you start to understand the true difference and contrast in their worlds, and how it's too late to do anything now, because suddenly everything's more irreparably broken than it was before, and we don't know what's going to happen next. But basically that's the storyline of book 1. Now the cheating doesn't necessarily happen in the show, but it does happen in the book, and I don't know if it will come up in the show later in the future. So I'm not a psychic, I cannot tell you that, but I will say I'm happy that so far it hasn't come up. I'm hoping it won't, because despite everything that's going on, I will never be a fan of cheating, and that's the reason I really hate book 2 and what comes afterward, because there's a lot that I can't stand behind, and I just don't think the grovel was enough. But I'll save all my thoughts for then, for the video that I'll be making on book 2. Now about the videos I'll be making on book 2 and 3, I think I'm gonna hold out for a little bit, because this book, it wasn't bad necessarily my reread, but it was 4 stars, not the 4.5 I originally gave it, because at this point I've watched the show, I've read all books, I've come back again to reread the books, and so it does make a person sick of being in the same world. Not that I hate it, I had a good time, it's just it got a little too monotonous for me, and at this point I would just like to go read some other books. So I will go re-energize, maybe read something else, and I will get back to these videos, but I cannot promise you when. It's just they will come at some point. Maybe if y'all give this like good response or whatever, if y'all end up enjoying this video specifically, I will get to them sooner, and I definitely will get to them. It's just I don't know when, but I just wanted to come here and mention in like a quick segment that book 2 and book 3 will also be getting spoiler breakdown videos. I just cannot commit to when, so we'll see about what happens when with that. But regardless, we've now reached the end of the spoiler breakdown video finally for book 1 of Maxton Hall, and we've also done kind of like a series recap of every moment that was similar from the book and the show. So this was a long video, and now that we've reached the end of it, hopefully you guys had like a fun time coming along with me. If you did, like, comment, share, subscribe. YouTube things, you know how to do them. And I am in a bit of like a reading slump now, so I will go read something else, and I will see y'all in next week's video with like something else going on, not necessarily the next video in this mini series. But regardless of whatever I see you with, whenever I see you, hopefully I will be out of my slump by then, because I might have been put into a little mini slump back again after having read this, which is not a great sign. So I will go figure out what I do next, but until then, hopefully I'll see y'all next week for whatever I end up doing. Until then, please take care, see you soon, and bye. That's it, literally bye, because I've been yapping for far too long, and I'll see y'all.